how dumb for having nothing to do.
Welcome back to the Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast. Episode number...
What number are we thinking of? 69, dudes!
Thank you, Keanu. Yes, it is episode number 69. The Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast is two blokes that have known each other forever, who catch up most days in the Melbourne CBD to talk everything Essendon Football Club. My name is Grant, and with me is Scott.
Hello, everyone. Well, it's the halfway part of the season. 11 rounds have gone past.
It's flown past.
We're in the what do I do this weekend round. It's well, thank goodness there's a bit of World Cup cricket and Ash Barty winning the French Open.
Go Ash.
So not a bad week for Aussie sports. But we thought we would just discuss a little bit about where we are this year and also sort of where the AFL sits today, and we'll just have an even look at the ladder.
Yep.
So we thought, we know we're kind of Essendon-centric, and just so you know, we've got Ronny Lerner coming on.
Yep, Ronny's the guest on today. He'll be giving us a really in-depth insight to the first set of 11 rounds. We're going to ask him a couple of questions about the next three games, the next big three games. And then, I don't know, we wanted to talk to him a bit about the youngsters. The form of the youngsters, which has been very pleasing to see. So he'll have plenty to say on that.
Out of curiosity, Grant, what's been your surprises this year as a competition? Like, who's gone well and who hasn't?
Oh, mate, to see Geelong 2 games clear on top of the AFL for me is a biggie. I think when they went and got Danger and they got Selwood, Danger and Ablett back and stuff, I think they thought that it would be really good. Like, you've got some incredible players in those 3 guys. And, I mean, the rest of the cast was pretty good anyway. But to be 2 games clear on top, I even reckon that would have surprised Geelong.
I must admit, I got it completely wrong. I thought they were going a little bit slowly backwards. They introduced some kids this year, and it's really paid off. It's a good message for all, I think. And
Yeah.
But I actually had them finishing around 7th or 8th. So they've really shocked me how well they're going this year. I think the Pies are kind of just sadly, I just think they're a good team. So I expect
it's annoying. I mean, they have literally just, I don't know how they do it. Get in their guild and check out how they've done it, because they've just got players left and right. Like, how do you have that many decent name footballers in the one side? Like, I don't know if they're paying them bugger all or something, but yeah, annoyingly, Collingwood are a bloody good side, which annoys the hell out of me to say.
Look, probably my biggest surprise is by far the Brisbane Lions. I thought they might improve because their kids were older, but to be in the top 6
totally shocked me.
Is all credit to them and Fagan as coach. So his stocks have gone up quite big because he's really unified the coach. I think Hodgie's role as a mentor is a really clever decision.
I think that at the beginning I thought Hodgie was heading up there for a bit of Dermott Brereton to Sydney, sort of Dermott Brereton to Collingwood superannuation top-up or something like that. Right? Yeah. So I thought he was just going to go up there and sit in the sun and top up his super. But it would appear that he's actually doing a good role there. I mean, again...
You have to think with Fagan and Hodgie, they're developing a culture of kind of excellence. Yeah. Which is something I think other teams will have a look at.
And the thing that amazes me about Brizzy is that it's doable.
Yeah.
Clearly that complete system change, the complete culture change that is required often to take sides that were not very good in the Brisbane Lions up to sides that are half decent is actually able to be done. So if people think, we've got to change our culture, and I don't know, we at the podcast have said a couple of times that we need to get a bit of mongrel into us at the Essendon Footy Club, a bit of sharpness, a bit of Dean Solomon and that sort of stuff. It's totally doable. It is actually able to be done.
Yeah. Look, the obvious disappointment is the Melbourne Football Club for me.
Yeah.
I think
what's wrong there?
I think everyone had them as top 4, most likely top 6. So to be in the bottom 3 and just.
But why?
I just sensed their off season was a complete mess. That's how they came out the start of the year, a little bit like us, but we've caught up a bit. I just sense that something's terribly gone wrong in the preseason.
Yeah,
and they've got a and I'm sure they'll have a formal review because they no way should be only 3 wins.
I absolutely agree. North for me is the other one. I think they've made their change now, but North, when they went and got what's his face from the Gold Coast, and they grabbed a couple of decent names. North this year, I thought, again, this is the year that they would actually take a step up, and very interestingly, they've taken a step backwards. Which, again, you look at it, they're only 2 spots below us on the list on the ladder at the moment,
and the same amount of wins.
And this is the thing. You look at Essendon and North, and we were the 2 teams that made really good gets in the off season. We went and got some quality players, and we're 11 and 12, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to us, and look, it's just a fact that the Essendon Football Club is probably one of their disappointments as well.
It has to be.
5 and 6. Look, it's not chopping your head off kind of.
I bet you Ronny Lerner says it is. I bet you Ronny will say that it's a complete fail.
But it's not good. Like you can't accept
acceptable.
it.
It's really not. That's again.
I think we're over being 10th and 10th and 11th and 9th.
We're not going to labour on the whole John Worsfold thing, but I tell you, I had a good think about it. Again, in the bye weekend, you get time to think about the club and that's the stuff. And being told we are on track, this is where we want to be, and we're on track, and we know the game plan, and we this and this and this, which is good if you're 3rd and you're aiming for 1st, not 10th and you're aiming to just sneak into the 8. Now, again, Danaher's out for an entire season, and I want to talk about that too, just quietly. And Jakey Stringer's been out for a while, and Dylan Shields been out for a while, and Smith's out for an entire season. But it is a disappointment, and you can't, as an Essendon supporter, be happy with 10th and 5 and 6.
Yeah, look, the only thing I will say, just the noise coming from the club, even after the Carlton win, like we said last week, Bush is sort of talking about the kids are a little bit now the future, and I think I just sense there's a bit of a change in mindset.
I hope so, because what more evidence do you need?
Yeah, I mean,
Dylan Clark comes in and tears Paddy Cripps apart.
I know, and now you know how good it is, because Cripps gets 38 possessions, 4 goals, and
wins an entire game of football off his own foot.
Yeah, so it tells you where Dylan Clark is at. And it tells you have to have faith in some kids.
That's it. Could you imagine? Dylan Clark could come out next week, a bit like Cole Langford did. He could come out and get 28, and then he'd come out and get 12.
Yeah.
He'd come out and get 12, and he might have just been super excited about being in the seniors for the first time in ages, and he had a real good game on Paddy Cripps, right? But let's see half a dozen games in a row of Dylan.
Yeah.
Let's have him be the Devon Smith replacement. Just straight like for like Devon Smith replacement. Yep. There's your opportunity, kid. 6 games in a row, off you go.
Exactly. So let's go to a break quickly, and we're going to talk about a new feature that's going to come on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we hope it gets in some enthusiasm, and we'll discuss it through.
Yep. Welcome back to the Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast. Now then, one thing we're going to be starting on the podcast in the not-too-distant future is a Patreon page. We've got a lot of loyal fans out there, and we would like to give you guys some extra bonus content and the like. Patreon, everybody knows what Patreon is. It allows us to, it allows you guys to get some extra Patreon exclusive content from us at the Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast. And it also helps us at the podcast do things like dramatically increase the quality of this podcast. What we're going to be doing is buying some new equipment and the like with any money that we get from you guys. There's some really good, we hope, and valuable extra content that we're hoping to release very soon. So, Scotty, what have we got the Patreons to look at?
So yeah, just to give some context, when we first started this podcast, it was a little bit of an impulse moment.
It was
for
a
our
Friday.
Facebook page.
It was a Friday, so we went, hey, let's just chuck this up and see what happens.
look, reality is we've got a 7-year-old desktop that we do this from, and it's so slow that it's
really, really annoying. We're currently at the podcast, and this is, again, some of the Patreons will get some behind-the-scene footage of this. Scott and I are currently huddled into way too close to each other into one microphone that we're trying to talk through this.
Yeah. And it's mainly just because the desktop is so aged. It's interfering in the sound when we set up our second microphone. So that's kind of where we're at. And look, we'll be discussing, because I know last week we said, look, we're happy to put on the free podcast. That's something we always want to do.
Absolutely. We'll be doing that forever.
So before we discuss this, I want to make it clear that our weekly podcast is always free, always on iTunes, on SoundCloud.
Yep.
The only thing we thought we could do, which is obviously quite a number of podcasters and YouTubers and everything like that are doing, is have a secondary kind of membership where it's for a very, very small fee, a monthly fee. You can gain different levels of access and interaction with us. So look, we're breaking it into 4 tiers, and we've worked out how we've done it. So there's a TAC Cup level membership.
TAC Cup for those, just beginning.
And what that does, it's basically $3 a month. What that does is we're going to do an exclusive Thursday night team selection, sort of a 10-15 minute kind of podcast.
Yep, extra podcast.
Discuss what we think of the team changes and everything like that.
Yep.
And we're also going to include some bonus behind the scenes footage of the podcast and some silly things that we do.
Here in the pink Scotty's front bedroom podcast studios.
Yes. Just so you get to know us a little bit better. And that's just a simple base level account, but it's actually quite good.
$3, cheaper than a small coffee.
So look, we're going to then go to a VFL level membership. That's $6 a month. It gives you everything that the TAC Cup level does. But what we're going to add to that is we're going to answer some questions that you send in with a shout out to your name on the weekly podcast or the Thursday night team selection. So a bit more to and fro and hearing your name and questions sort of answered and called out on the show.
You want any sort of inside info from us? You want your questions answered personally? Scotty and I can get that done for you.
Then we go to an AFL level member, which is $10 a month. So it covers everything in the previous 2 memberships.
Yep, the TAC and VFL.
And this time we're going to do more of a personalised shout outs at the of the end of episodes.
Yeah, so, at the end of each podcast, all of the Patreons that are in the AFL level membership, we'll give you guys a personalised shout out every podcast. Yeah.
And look, just so you know, we're hoping to get a few bits of merchandise, but that's in the early stages. And we'll work out what we do with that. Look, there is a $20, I know it's very exclusive, all Australian level, what we call membership.
Yep.
It covers nearly everything of the previous 3. But what it will get you is really very exclusive. You'll be on a 5-10 minute guest live on the podcast.
If you want to be on the podcast, absolutely. We will we'll call you and we can have a chat about that week's game. Anything you want to talk about on the podcast. We'll get in touch with you before the podcast. Got any questions for us, we can cover them on the podcast. It's almost like you'll be a guest on the Lunchtime Catch-Up podcast. A bit like we've got Ronny Lerner coming up very soon. We can get your expert analysis on the upcoming game.
How you think Essendon's going?
How you think they're going. That'll be great. We're actually looking forward to that one.
And that's sort of at least once every 3 months kind of view. So it's all different levels. Starts with just $3. So look, there's no pressure at all. It's just
absolutely not. No,
just it really is part donation, and you get extra content. But look, for us to, in all honesty, we have some minor concern about the desktop crashing.
Yeah.
So we've realised, we always wanted it to be free, but we always realised, okay, let's put the podcast on for free as always.
Yep.
But let's create something new and just put it out there. And look, if no one signs up or a heap signs up, good. But there's no pressure at all. So It's just something there. It'll be always a lot of extra footage that you'll get access to, and it's just something we wanted to do.
Yeah, we hope there's got to be.
It keeps the podcast going, because our goal is at least within the next year to upgrade our desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess one thing to stress too on this is that whatever money comes in from you guys, trust me, this is not going to anything other than upgrading
want,
just the PC and the microphones and stuff.
Hopefully people know my integrity. We want zero profit from this. So we've created our own little bank account, Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast equipment account.
Yep.
And that's strictly what it is.
Actually, we're looking forward to doing cool stuff, sort of, if we can get this money. And also, we're putting our own money to it as well. But if we can get this sort of to a position where we can afford, I don't know, some half-decent video cameras or something like that, we want to do a video podcast as well. Yeah. We can chuck it on
YouTube.
Chuck it on YouTube, yeah, absolutely. We can do a video, introduce our ugly mugs to the equation. But we're really hoping there's a lot of value for money there for the Patreons.
Yeah, exactly. And there could be a whole lot of different things. I mean, we love movies, music. We can just do anything. So you're a little bit more getting to know us.
Yeah.
And us getting to know you on a more deeper level.
Yep.
And so we just wanted to shout that out. No pressure at all, honestly. That's not our style. But it's something that will be live hopefully in about a week's time. Yeah. So look out for more information.
Cool.
I reckon we get Ronny on. Let's talk Essendon.
Cool. Let's talk Ronny.
All right. See you after the break.
This is it, folks. Over the top.
Welcome back to the Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast. On the line, we have Mr. Ronny Lerner. How are you, Ronny?
Very well, thanks for having me.
Look, it's been an interesting first 11, 12 rounds for the season.
Yes,
some teams going very, very well and some going well below expectations. And I think initially outside of Essendon, can you name a team that you think has gone above expectation and well below a team?
Well, I reckon, I'm going to nominate Geelong. I really thought the way they lost that elimination final to Melbourne last year, they were pretty much listless in that game. And I thought, all right, they've finally reached the end of this 15 years of just incredible output, and they're going to slide down now, and we'll struggle to make the 8. And they're now the best team in the comp by a street. It's an extraordinary achievement from Chris Scott and the recruitment team, especially, like not only the recycle players in Gary Rowan and Luke Dalhouse, but to get such an impact from those first year players like Myers and Constable and Clark and all those guys. They've just lifted the team to back to where they used to being in the last 15 years, and that is right at the top of the ladder. So they are looking unbelievable. 11 wins, 1 loss, a percentage of 151.
Yeah.
Good luck stopping them this year for the Flag, because they're looking incredible.
Yeah, well, exactly. I tipped them to finish 8th, so I'm well off. I just thought they were slowly just a bit like Hawthorn. I kind of had Geelong and Hawthorn on a similar path. Yeah. And now they're 2 games clear on top. And I must admit, I'm still waiting to see how they are in finals. I don't know why, but I just...
Oh, but they've got enough names. They've got enough veterans, I think, that will perform well in finals as well. One of the questions I had for you, Ronny, was without those kids stepping up, and those kids that I've been very impressed with at Geelong, like you, was Selwood, Ablett and Dangerfield going to get it done? Or did they need those 2 to 3 to 4 kids to stand up?
Oh, I think clearly they needed it. They needed those extra. They needed that extra help for sure. And you're obviously throwing Tim Kelly as well. He's probably a chance to win the Brownlow this year the way he's going. I definitely think that they've really bolstered those midfield rotations. It allows Ablett to spend a bit of time up forward. It allows Dangerfield to spend a bit of time up forward. And their backline, as Essendon fans saw a couple of weeks ago, obviously Essendon made the job easy for them, but geez, their back 6 is one of the best in the comp. So there aren't too many weak links on the field at Geelong, and their only loss of the year was by 4 points to GWS. So they really are. Yeah. They are an ominous unit. I don't know who's going to stop them, to be honest. So, and I kind of had harboured the same fears that you did about them in the finals, but I think they've put that to bed now. They've won 4 games out of 4 at the MCG this year. I think, watch out is what I would say.
Now, with today's result, is on the other scale, is the Demons pretty much the biggest disappointment?
Yeah, no doubt. Melbourne, very disappointing this year. I mean, to back up a preliminary final appearance with a 3-9 start to the year. That is just an absolute catastrophe to me. No, there's no other way to describe it really. And their wins, and I mean, they scraped home with a miracle against the Gold Coast. I mean, I don't know how they won that, and they beat Sydney, which was all right. That was up there. And their third win against Hawthorn. So, I mean, that's not a bad scalp, although the Hawks aren't travelling that well. So it really has been a year to forget for them. And it's very similar to Essendon. I think, they get a lot of the ball. They get a lot of the ball inside 50, but they just cannot capitalise. And it's a very similar story. I think Essendon fans can relate. I think Essendon, I think they've shown that this year, which has surprised me, that they've actually got just a bit more talent and class than Melbourne, but that's not really saying much, is it? The way Melbourne are travelling. So
that's true.
It's been a real year to forget. I think they're already in the 2020 pre-season as we speak, Melbourne, because I think their list is good enough. I just think they were derailed really badly by off-season surgeries. I really think they underestimated how bad that would be, how bad that would impact the club. And I think, publicly they won't say this, but I think privately they'll be thinking we're already in pre-season mode for 2020, and I reckon they'll start not only selecting players but also positioning players on the field with an eye to 2020, no doubt, because they know how close they came last year. And I don't think their list is that bad, but it's been a year to forget for them for sure.
So let's now move to the Essendon Football Club at 5 and 6. Look, we actually had a recent conversation 3 or 4 weeks ago about some obvious the way we're kicking it to opposition back lines, or I guess our non-existent forward line or a small Waller. Can I ask, with the sort of discussion happening around about structures and everything like that, I just noticed, did you notice this, just a slight change in language from Worsfold after the Carlton game, where he actually specifically wanted to note that he's now relying a bit more on the youngsters, like that's his move forward. And I thought that was a slight change in language than previously. And you have then a Myers on TV basically almost saying that his career's coming to an end.
Mm. Yeah, well, we flagged that. I remember the last time we spoke, we had I don't think fears is the right word, but we had doubts over whether Myers would continue beyond this year. I mean, I think I nominated Zach Harakis as well. Zach has been okay, but still, just I don't know. He just doesn't. I don't think he's reached those same lofty heights he once did earlier in his career. So I'm not too sure where he'll be at the end of the year. But yeah, I think it's great that they are finally rewarding these youngsters, because like we've also spoken about in a podcast ago or two, it's one of the better crops of youngsters I can remember Essendon having on the list. I just think there's so much talent there, not getting much of a go. And I mean, we see now Parrish is in career best form, no question about that.
Yep.
He was dropped earlier this year, of course. Kyle Langford was dropped earlier this year, of course, and he's starting to show some real signs, especially in that Richmond game. He almost, him and Parrish almost won the game for Essendon. I mean, late in that last quarter, they really led the charge. And then, if you don't mind, Dylan Clark in his second game, stopping Patrick Cripps, who just played one of the best individual games we've seen in a very long time. And Dylan Clark stopped him to 11 touches. I mean, that's I don't know too many better second games in AFL history.
You're right.
For much more than that.
And we've never had that strategic kind of weapon before on our list.
Well, that's right. And I sort of tweeted about it after that game a week ago. I think it was in Clark's performance is an interesting moment in time for Essendon's game plan strategy and their tactics, because as you quite rightly say, probably since Heath Hocking, Ben Howlett, Essendon really hasn't used a tagger. I mean, Heppel's done a few sort of head-to-head jobs, but it's not a real serious tag, is it?
No.
But Dylan Clark was solely, he was there to stop Patrick Cripps. That was his role, and he got the ball 23 times himself. So I think this really does open the question that I think from now on it's going to be the way Clark played. It's going to be very hard for Essendon to not go in with the tag for the foreseeable future, especially when you look at recent performances like, against Richmond. I mean, Dusty had the ball in his string, and Pendlebury on Anzac Day had a
Yeah,
huge day
yeah.
out. I mean,
We've been
I think
crying for it, I reckon. We've been crying for it, like you just said. I mean, you name Pendlebury, Dusty, Cripps, Dangerfield, any of these guys that end up side bottom, those kind of guys end up tearing us apart.
Yeah.
If this kid, I mean, and the knock on him is that he's not got the world's greatest foot skills and that sort of stuff, but the boy can get the ball a hell of a lot. And if he's got the aerobic capacity and or / strength to deal with a Paddy Cripps like that, then, mate, let him go. Let the young fella go, because, mate, that puts him. That's the point of difference for that kid that gets him a game. And the amount of times we play Collingwood, and I think you bet your life, still Sidebottom's going to get 25 and kick 2, or Pendlebury's going to do it, or somebody's going to do it. It'd be nice to be able to have a kid that, if he can knock off the likes of one of those guys plus get 20 possessions, he's going to be an incredible player.
Yeah, absolutely. And even at Geelong, I think Tim Kelly was brilliant that day, and he just sort of did as he pleased. So, there's a whole roll call of star midfielders who've had their way with us. And then if as it looks like, clearly, based on last week's performance, there is a weapon there that can do the job, use him, I think.
Absolutely.
I think it changes the philosophy, it's changed it overnight. It just has to, I think.
The quick follow-up on that is that do you reckon Woosha will? Do you reckon but no, seriously, I mean, is that part of the plan that he keeps telling us that, yes, we know the plan, we're working on the plan, we know the plan?
Yeah.
Is he the kind of coach that will take oh my God, did you see that kid go? He gets another game? Or is he going to drop him again and just say that's not part of the plan at the moment?
Jeez, I would be shocked how could you drop him after that performance? I would be absolutely staggered if he. I think I had him probably second best on ground that day, just behind Hooker. I know Heppel had a lot of the ball, but I thought Heppel turned the ball over quite a bit. And he kicked a nice goal. And he was probably. I probably had Heppel and Parrish on probably level pegging in third spot maybe. But I mean, because to stop Patrick Cripps, that's an incredible achievement the way he did it. No, I would be staggered. And to Woosh's credit, he's got many critics amongst the Essendon fans, but to his credit, he has shown in the last couple of seasons that he is willing to change styles at certain times. I mean, more often than not, he's quite stubborn and refuses to make. From an in-game perspective, he's very stubborn. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But from week to week, he showed last year that he completely changed the game plan after about round 8, and this year he changed it again after round 2. So
I think
from that perspective, I think he can be flexible.
I guess the key is to have the right game plan game 1, and
that's it. Well,
that'd be nice.
Correct. Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it, for Essendon fans?
2020 maybe.
Spend 6 months. Any danger of spending 6 months working on a game plan that works?
That's the bit that really surprises me, and the bit that he's the coach and everything, and I'll give him that. But mate, you had 6 months. You would have had your game plan signed off by the board. You would have had all the coaches buy into it. The players have been told about it infinitum over the period. They would have been training, and then all of a sudden that just gets chucked out of the window in game 3. That's a significant worry for me. That a guy can go, right, this is what we're doing. This is what my experienced head says, and bang, abandoned. Game 3, abandoned. It's a worry for me.
It's a fair point you raise, for sure. Yeah,
can I? Ronny. Just one thing I've been discussing with fans, and we've been getting sort of fans' reactions. And an interesting theme came through the week, and it's something I've been thinking about. I haven't mentioned it with you before. It's the strategy of our kickouts after a point, and there seems to be 2 plays. One is the sort of a kick 20 metres to the right on the boundary line, or Hurley basically kicking it down to Bellchambers near the boundary line 50 metres out. And it kind of seems to be that's it. And there's just the questions that we got asked, and we got asked to ask yourself, is the lack of creativity in our kicking out and set plays. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It's not, I think there are many times with kickouts, a lot of Essendon fans would have their heads in their hands, just thinking, "Where's this ball going to end up?" Especially was it a game or two ago? Conor McKenna had just some shocking kick-ins.
He had a dog. Yeah.
Was it against Richmond? Was it? I think. Or
Yeah.
was it the
Yeah.
game? Yeah. So yeah, I don't. It does look like that's one of the areas of the game that is probably neglected a bit. It looks like it. I'm sure they do spend time on it, but compared to every other aspect of the game, yeah, it is a pretty basic. It looks like a pretty basic strategy. But having said that, I'm not too sure what else. I mean, how many other ways you can sort of exit your forward 50? You know, it's you just got to. Sorry, your back 50. Your back 50. I think you just got to. Yeah, this day and age. You just got to get it out of there. What I would say is, I think quite, I wouldn't say often, but more often than not, I think than they should be. I think the use of the new rules, like in terms of just running out of the goal square, that hasn't been used completely. Like,
No.
Here and there, the kick, the guy that kicks out stays in the goal square quite a bit. Like I think that might be sort of taking a while to completely or exploit the new rules. That's so I think that's something I may have noticed as well.
And just another matter, if you had a positive for Essendon, which would be the last sort of 9 weeks, the opposition scoring on an average of 66 points, and that back six, is that to you the obvious strength of Essendon now is their defence? Because that back six has pretty much been settled for 6 or 7 weeks now with the introduction of Redmond.
Well, I mean, the one thing about Essendon, I think their defence for the last 20 years has been their strength. I don't think very rarely has there been a year where you think, oh, geez, how shaky does Essendon look in defence? Once again this year, the key defensive trios of Hurley, Hooker, and Ambrose stood up really well. And now, as you say, the addition of Redmond, very good. Sard and McKenna have been a bit hit and miss. Sard's probably, I would say, has been much better than McKenna this year.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. It's been, and you know, even McNeese was pretty good on the weekend. Your namesake was had a pretty good game last week against Carlton. I've had my doubts about him, and I was quite surprised that he's kept Jordan Ridley out of the team, but he did a good effort. He did a good job against Carlton. I think he didn't do too much wrong. So no, but more broadly, you're right. I think the back six has been really good, and that probably has been Essendon's strength this year. Having said that, I think Heppel's led really well this year. I think Zach Merritt's working into the season quite well.
Yeah.
And as we said, as we mentioned earlier, the youngsters are a good sign as well. So, but yeah, it's the forward line's obviously the massive issue. It's just and the way they move the ball inside forward 50 is the biggest issue this year, and it has cost Essendon games, and they're probably not going to make the finals this year. I really highly doubt they make the finals this year.
But that entry into the forward 50 is, I mean, I wonder if from the coaching staff, is it a big task to fix, or is that it's not?
You wouldn't think so, but you look at it happens every week, so it must be a real issue.
Yeah, it must be.
Because they just it must be really hard to deprogram and reprogram these guys because they just seem to be making the same mistakes on a weekly basis. Take away the Carlton game. It's Carlton. You're taking a team, talking about a team that looked like Fitzroy, really.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it was just mindlessly, just ridiculous bombing forward with no real thought, not even looking, no inclination to lower the eyes, and maybe one extra kick before entering the forward 50. That's been the biggest issue for Essendon, for quite a few years, I reckon. It's been. I think most Essendon fans would agree that the way the ball is delivered to the forward line has been a huge issue for quite a while. So.
Yeah, and it's always been an argument whether it's the midfield group or the forwards. I mean, I often hear that the forwards aren't structuring themselves to how the coach wants, and that's kind of my inside to sort of that I get a clear message that it's not always the mids that that they're looking up and basically they're not getting much help from I mean, a lot of people argue that we're kicking it to Waller, to a small guy on his head, and some information I get is after the game is Waller kind of gets the you're the only one that's basically structuring how I wanted you to structure up, and that's why you're getting that kick. Whereas a few guys are getting a little bit told off recently about moving up the ground too much.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's the case, that would make sense because, I mean, how often have we seen the long ball being kicked to the smallest guy on the team? It's just, it's insanity. It's footy's version of insanity, and it happens so often. It's crazy. It really is.
And I worry so much that we're wasting a once in a very good long period of time 6'6" leading forward in Joe Danaher. The kid may or may not be around for a hell of a long period of time, and you don't get players like that running out of full forward very often, and we keep bombing it onto a skinny bloke's head. Whereas if he led like Waller was leading, and the ball got dropped into Waller the way it was dropped into Danaher the way it was dropped into Waller, we'd have a 60 to 80. You'd have the season he had a couple of years ago. But yeah, that is a dead set worry for us. But on the positives, what do you see for the Bombers in the next couple of weeks?
Is it the positives or the negatives?
Well,
we've got three. Yeah, it's obviously we've got 3 big games, and look, we're probably not favourites in all 3, but somehow we have to win 2 out of 3.
Well, I wouldn't count on it to put it that way.
Look, I think we can. Yeah, you go for it.
Hawthorn's a winnable game, no doubt. They're not travelling crash up, but then again, you think about the coaches who are up against each other. Clarkson versus Ross. Well, I don't know which coach I'll be backing in an unclear match as to who's going to win it. And then GWS and West Coast. Oh God, good luck, Essendon. I tell you that much. I reckon they'll be 6 and 8, possibly 5 and 9, and another season down the gurgler, and that raises the question: does Worsfold see out the last year of his contract? If you ask me, I say no.
It's unfortunately where a lot of people's minds are at the moment. Again, if we have such a negative season as we seem to be having, Scotty and I were just looking at the ladder before the podcast, and Scotty said something which really echoed well. Is that I'm sick of finishing 10th. I'm sick of finishing 8th and then getting bumped out in the first round. Well, I'm really sick of it.
Essendon's, in my opinion, Essendon's very much the new Richmond. They're what Richmond were, and now Richmond's what Essendon was in terms of growing up in the 90s. I mean, Essendon's become this club that's just, it just doesn't win finals. It's a big club with a big supporter base, but does nothing on the field. It's been like that for quite a long time now, and they remind me of what Richmond was when I was growing up. Like, everyone laughed. Richmond was a joke. Everyone laughed at them.
Songs about it, yeah.
Despite being so big and such a big supporter base. And I don't know, part of me thinks it's going to be a very long haul before Essendon can get back to, the glory, something that resembles what they were under Kevin Sheedy, in particular. So, I don't know. I mean, if they don't make the finals this year, if you ask me, there's no way out for Worsfold. That's inexcusable. You cannot miss the finals 2 years in a row with this list that he's got, and is contracted for next year. But we know these days 1 year payouts are very common.
Yeah.
So I think if the writing's on the wall even earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if you start hearing rumblings, because Carlton and North are already in the hunt for new coaches.
Yeah, there's a precedent.
So in many respects, they've got the head start. So, I mean, if Essendon are in a position now where they might have to pull the trigger to get in that race, they might. Maybe forces beyond their control will have to force them to pull that trigger. So it'll be a very interesting second half of the year on many fronts for Essendon. Yeah,
and look, we'll let you go soon, but I must admit, one thing's for sure is we have an attractive list, though, for a coach who would consider Essendon as over. If you had all those 3 clubs up for grabs, I mean, think of a big club, with a good, healthy age list and talent. You'd have to think they would go, look, Essendon's probably top of the tree because I can get some success fairly quickly if I get it right.
Yeah.
Look. Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
Look, thanks so much for coming on, Ronny. We always appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see what the next 4 weeks holds.
Absolutely.
It could be...
it could be a slightly depressing
next podcast. Could be the last post before you come on.
Yeah.
But We'll see where we go. If they surprise us and win 3 of the next 4, then we're well and truly in the season again.
So where can the listeners find you, Ronnie?
They can find me. They can find my stuff in the pages of The Age or online at The Age Sport, Real Footy, and also on Twitter and social media at Ronny Lerner. That's RONNYLERNER.
And I highly recommend following Ronnie on Twitter. By the way, he's definitely one of the best to follow in my view. Anyway, that's my personal bias view.
Beautiful.
Oh, you make me blush.
Thank you very much again, Ronnie. We will talk to you in a few weeks' time.
No worries, boys. Thanks.
Thanks,
Have a great night, Ronnie.
Cheers.
It hurts with every heartbeat. It hurts with every heartbeat. It hurts with every heartbeat.
And welcome back to the Lunchtime Catch-Up podcast. Now then, a big thank you to Ronny Lerner again for coming on the show. Some great insights there again.
Honest as always.
Honest as always. I think if we don't make finals this year and actually win 1 or 2, there might be a column that says Mr. Worsfold's time is up, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, but that's what I love about Ronnie.
Absolutely.
He speaks from the heart, speaks how he feels, and that's what you want from a journalist. So,
Again, you beat Carlton, so it's another week down the track where, okay, we got to win, and that's great, and it was only Carlton, but again, you come back to that whole, we've got to perform better than this. He was saying Melbourne would be just looking at their season going, that's not acceptable.
And Melbourne's the exact same, but Goodwin's probably just got 1 year's grace because it's just happened this year. But he's got a great list, and there's no way they should be playing to that standard.
Correct.
So he's got a very similar situation.
Yep.
Well, it's the midweek podcast, and thank you so much, everyone, for...
Yeah, absolutely.
We weren't sure how we're going to fill out a show, but it's worked beautifully.
Yes, it has.
Thanks to Ronnie.
Very much to Ronnie.
Look, we just want to thank you again for all your support and all your messages of support. Yep. The numbers have been fantastic as always. So we truly appreciate the fans.
We absolutely we do, of course, and I guess we're trying to take things to the next level at the podcast. We like I said, I'm about 4 inches from Scott's nose right now as I say this. So we're going to start up our Patreon page, and we hope that you guys can get a good amount of value out of that Patreon. We're going to have some fun doing it. We want to introduce our ugly mugs on video, and we'll see if you like that.
You won't.
You probably won't. But as we draw it to the close, you can get us on the socials. You can get us on the Lunchtime Catch-Up podcast Facebook page. You can get us at...
The Lunch Catch-Up?
Yeah, The Lunch Catch-Up. We couldn't get the Lunchtime Catch-Up podcast, so it's The Lunch Catch-Up at...
on Twitter.
On Twitter. You can get us at the Lunchtime Catch-Up podcast Insta page. And with regards to the podcast itself, you can get us on iTunes, Spotify, you can get us on SoundCloud, you can get us on everywhere. Scotty's done some incredible work there.
I think I just said Spotlight then. Spotify, sorry.
Spotify. Now, Scotty, what do we got happening for next week that you've been telling me about?
Oh, yes. We've got... look, we just got... last night, Grant Thomas has agreed to be on the show.
I love the way you just dropped that really quickly. That was Grant Thomas, former AFL coach, former media personnel, or still media personality.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about the AFL direction of the game, governance of the AFL. A lot of instances with how fans are getting punished at games. Even with the reaction to the Goods incident with the AFL and just the optics around the AFL and how they react once they're finally pushed. I think it was a good time to actually have a podcast, a segment for about 20-25 minutes just to bring up the AFL and the concerns around the AFL and the fans' concern around the AFL and have a discussion. And
Grant is not backwards in coming forwards.
No,
with his opinions
like
either.
Ronnie, Grant's going to say his peace of mind.
Yep.
But it was a good guest to get, so really wrapped. So we'll discuss it on, I think, next Monday night. We've got it lined up for
it.
So it should be a fantastic show. So
tune in for that one.
Something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, everyone. Look forward to the Hawthorn game Friday night, is it? Yeah.
Go Bombers. As I said, if we can get this one in the bag because we should, I'll be a happy boy. If GWS and who else? and West Coast.
Yep.
If they're losses, then I won't be a happy boy, but I'll understand. This is the one where you go, look, we played reasonably well at Carlton. If we can transfer that reasonably good form into Hawthorn and beat them because we should, I think that's a win for us. Like, it's not a win just on the board, but it's a win for... We're starting to change things around a little bit, but then we'll see how we go against those other two.
Well, it means also, too, we go to 6-6, so there's something about being not behind on losses, wins and losses.
Yeah, agree.
So,
absolutely.
Hopefully it gives a bit of confidence to the boys as well.
All right, thank you very much, everybody, for listening again, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Catch you, everyone.